At the beginning of the story, we're introduced to a city called Baltiz, a place where people used to live with joy and hope. The people of Baltiz believed that anything was possible, and because of that positive outlook, the city felt almost magical. Everywhere you looked, there was happiness and wonder, but that was all about to change. After a long and devastating war, the people of Baltiz lost their faith and optimism. They stopped believing in possibilities, and little by little, the magic seemed to disappear from the city. Strange clouds settled over the sky. They never moved, and they never brought any rain. A heavy silence fell across Baltiz, and the once magical city slowly became a gloomy and lifeless place. We then meet a young orphan boy named Peter. He was being raised by a retired soldier named Vilna. Vilna never allowed Peter to play outside with the other kids because he believed the world was cruel and unforgiving. He wanted Peter to grow up strong and disciplined, just like a soldier, so he could survive in such a harsh world. One day, as usual, Vilna gives Peter a single coin and tells him to buy a small fish and some stale bread from the market. Vilna believed that stale bread made your teeth stronger, and eating a tiny fish would teach Peter how to deal with hunger. Peter takes the coin and heads to the market. A fish seller first offers him a large fish, but Peter immediately refuses because Vilna had specifically asked for a small one. The seller then shows him a smaller fish, but before Peter can buy it, a man riding a bicycle crashes into him. The coin slips from Peter's hand and rolls away. As Peter chases after it, he eventually finds himself standing in front of a mysterious red tent. A sign outside reads, "1 coin for the answer to a single question." Peter starts to walk away because that 1 coin is all he has, and he can't afford to waste it. But there's something he's always wanted to know. Is his little sister still alive? Unable to resist, Peter steps inside the tent. There, he meets a fortune teller who studies his hand and tells him something unbelievable. His little sister is still alive. Peter is completely shocked. He explains that when he was very young, he held his baby sister in his arms, and he clearly remembers that she was alive. But Vilna had always told him that both his mother and sister died when he was a child. Strangely, the fortune teller seems to know details about Peter's past that nobody else should know. She warns him that he only has 1 coin, so he should choose his question carefully. After thinking for a moment, Peter asks, "How can I find my sister?" The fortune teller gives him a strange answer: "Follow the elephant." Peter stares at her in confusion. What kind of answer is that? How is following an elephant supposed to help me find my sister? There isn't even an elephant in this town. The fortune teller simply shrugs and replies, "That's your problem." After that, Peter returns home. Since he spent the coin at the fortune teller's tent instead of buying food, there is no breakfast that day, which makes Vilna furious. When Peter tells him that the fortune teller said his sister is still alive, Vilna becomes even angrier. He insists that he personally saw Peter's mother and sister die years ago and tells Peter to stop chasing impossible stories. Vilna believes Peter is being fooled by false hope, so he decides to teach him a lesson. He asks Peter to bring him an old book. It was a storybook with the name Dismit written on the cover. Vilna explains that the book once belonged to his friend Dismit during the war. According to him, Dismit spent too much time reading fairy tales and fantasy stories. Because of that, he wasn't becoming a real soldier. He was too emotional and too soft. So Vilna secretly stole the book from him. After losing it, Dismit eventually became one of the fiercest and most feared soldiers on the battlefield. Peter looks at him and asks, "Why are you telling me this?" Vilna replies, "Because comfort and dreams don't make soldiers. Stop believing the stories that woman told you." A moment later, Vilna notices something unusual in the alley beside their building. He grabs his binoculars and looks outside. Peter quickly points out that it's just a few cats wandering around, but Vilna is convinced there's more to it. He believes someone is secretly watching them and that the cats are part of a larger pattern leading back to that person. Determined to uncover the truth, Vilna orders Peter to continue his military drills while he keeps a close eye on the cats. Peter lived with Vilna in an old apartment building. On the floor below them lived Mr. Leo and his wife. Because Peter was constantly marching back and forth as part of his drills, dust kept falling into their apartment, making it difficult for them to enjoy their dinner. Leo calls up to Peter and asks why he's still marching around during dinner time. Peter explains that he spent his coin on a fortune teller who claimed she could answer one important question. According to her, his little sister was still alive, and the only way to find her was to follow an elephant. But that doesn't make any sense. Peter says. There isn't even an elephant anywhere in town. Unlike most people in Baltiz, Mr. Leo is an optimist. He still believes that unexpected things can happen, so he smiles and says, well, what if there is an elephant? Peter is surprised by the idea, but before they can continue talking, Leo's wife calls him back inside. As they sit down for dinner, Leo talks about Peter and wonders what kind of life a child has when he's forced to spend every day marching like a soldier. His wife gently reminds him that there isn't much they can do about it. In the next scene, we see a magic show taking place in town. But because the people of Baltiz had stopped believing in anything impossible, nobody laughed, smiled, or reacted to the magician's tricks. The audience sat there in complete silence. The magician himself wasn't very successful either. His powers were unpredictable, and he struggled to control his magic. Seeing the show fall apart, he becomes desperate and decides to attempt a spell he has never tried before. He invites a woman onto the stage and performs a powerful piece of magic, one that he hopes will restore hope to the people of Baltiz and make them believe in wonder again. But things go horribly wrong. The spell doesn't work as intended. A second later, a giant elephant crashes through the roof of the building and lands right in the theater. The crowd panics as chaos erupts throughout the hall. Later that night, Peter dreams about his little sister. The dream fills him with hope, and he wakes up feeling happier than he has in years. The next morning, he rushes to the marketplace because he wants to ask the fortune teller how he's supposed to find his sister. But when Peter arrives, the mysterious red tent is gone, completely gone. He asks people nearby about it, but nobody seems to know what he's talking about. As Peter searches around, he overhears people discussing something incredible. An elephant has appeared in town, and the soldiers have it locked up. The moment Peter hears this, his face lights up. To him, this proves that the fortune teller was telling the truth, and if she was right about the elephant, then maybe she was right about his sister being alive too. While walking through town, Peter runs into Mr. Leo and excitedly tells him everything. After hearing the story, Leo promises that he'll help Peter free the elephant. Peter then rushes home and tells Vilna that an elephant has actually appeared in Baltiz. To Peter, it's proof that the fortune teller was right all along, but Vilna refuses to believe any of it. He insists that it's all nonsense and nothing more than another fairy tale. Still, Peter no longer doubts the fortune teller's words. He becomes determined to free the elephant and use it to help find his sister. Meanwhile, we see the magician sitting in jail. He's completely confused and can't stop wondering where the elephant came from. The truth is, he never intended to summon an elephant at all. During the show, he was only trying to magically bring a bouquet of flowers onto the stage to impress the woman he had invited up there. Just then, that same woman arrives. When the elephant crashed into the theater, it landed on top of her, leaving her with broken legs. She blames the magician for everything that happened. The magician desperately tries to explain that he meant to summon flowers, not an elephant, but she refuses to believe him. In the next scene, Mr. Leo visits the mayor. He learns that the elephant is being kept in chains. The mayor's advisors believe the animal should be put down because they see it as a dangerous threat to the town. Leo is shocked by the idea. He argues that the elephant should be set free, but the mayor agrees with the advisors. She also believes the elephant is too dangerous to keep alive. That's when Leo comes up with a clever plan. He decides to write a letter to the king. Leo knows that the king loves unusual entertainment and fascinating stories. He figures that if the king hears about an elephant falling from the sky and accidentally breaking a woman's legs, he'll be too curious to ignore it. When the king's servants deliver the letter, the king is busy watching a hilarious staged fight and having a great time. But the moment he reads about the mysterious elephant, his curiosity takes over. He immediately decides to travel to Baltiz and see the elephant for himself. As news of the king's visit spreads, the entire town begins preparing for his arrival. And for the first time in a long while, Baltiz starts to feel a little more alive. When the king finally arrives in Baltiz, the elephant is cleaned up, decorated, and proudly brought before him. The king is absolutely thrilled when he sees the enormous animal, but suddenly, the elephant becomes agitated. The crowd immediately panics, and the soldiers prepare to shoot it before anyone gets hurt. Just as they're about to fire, Peter rushes in front of them and begs them to stop. Looking closer, Peter realizes what's wrong. The elephant had been covered in colorful paint to make it look impressive for the king's visit, but some of the paint got into its eyes, causing severe irritation and making it panic. Peter carefully approaches the elephant and tries to help. At first, the elephant lashes out and throws him aside. Everyone gasps in fear, but Peter refuses to give up. He walks back toward the elephant a second time. This time, the elephant allows him to come closer because it senses that Peter isn't trying to hurt it. Peter rolls a bucket of water toward the elephant. The elephant immediately sprays the water over itself, washing away all the paint. Once the irritation is gone, it quickly calms down and returns to normal. The crowd erupts with excitement. Mr. Leo and the townspeople cheer for Peter, praising him for saving the day. Afterward, the mayor approaches Peter and asks if he would be willing to help care for the elephant. But Peter shakes his head. Instead, he asks if the elephant can be given to him. He explains that he believes the elephant is the key to finding his missing sister. The mayor refuses. Before the discussion can continue, the king steps forward with an idea. He announces that if Peter can complete 3 challenges, the elephant will be his. The king thinks Peter is an unusually clever kid, and he sees this as a chance for a little entertainment. For the first challenge, Peter must face the king's strongest warrior. The king even hands Peter a sword for the duel. The problem is that the sword is so heavy Peter can barely lift it off the ground, let alone use it in battle. Seeing how worried Peter is, Mr. Leo reassures him, "Don't worry, I'll teach you how to fight." Back home, Leo spends the evening training Peter and showing him how to handle a sword so he'll be ready for the challenge. Meanwhile, we meet a young girl named Adele. As she sleeps, she dreams about a mysterious elephant. Moments later, she wakes up startled. Adele goes to speak with a nun and tells her about the strange dream. It turns out Adele was adopted by this nun and has been living with her ever since. The nun comforts her and gently tucks her back into bed. At the same time, the elephant is having dreams of its own. In its dream, it's happily surrounded by its family, but when it wakes up, it finds itself chained inside a cage, completely alone. The sight makes the elephant deeply sad. Later, Peter visits the elephant. He spreads a map out in front of it and asks if it can somehow show him where his sister is. Of course, the elephant has no idea what Peter is talking about. Instead, it simply hands him an apple with its trunk. Peter laughs and happily accepts it. Over time, Peter and the elephant begin forming a genuine friendship. The two quickly become inseparable. The next day, the entire town gathers to watch Peter face the king's greatest warrior. No one is more excited than the king himself. Soon, Peter and the mighty warrior step into the arena. The warrior's name is Dismit. He's enormous, powerful, and far more experienced than Peter. There is no way Peter can defeat him in a fair fight. But then Peter remembers something. The storybook Vilna once talked about. The book he stole from a soldier during the war belonged to someone named Dismit. And this warrior is that same Dismit. Instead of fighting, Peter suddenly takes off running. The crowd is completely confused. Peter isn't trying to win with a sword. He's trying to return Dismit's lost storybook and remind him of who he used to be. As soldiers and Dismit chase after him through town, Peter narrowly escapes capture several times. Eventually, he reaches the fish shop where he normally buys food. There, he grabs a large fish and races back home. Before going inside, Peter gives the fish to the neighborhood cats living near the building. As the cats begin fighting over the fish and making a huge racket, Vilna becomes convinced that some kind of attack is about to happen. He immediately grabs his binoculars and focuses all of his attention on the cats. Using the distraction, Peter sneaks into the apartment, grabs Dismit's old storybook, and escapes without being noticed. A short time later, Peter stands face to face with Dismit once again. The warrior is furious and ready to strike, but then Peter holds up the storybook. The moment Dismit sees it, everything changes. He instantly recognizes the book. When he was a child, his mother used to read stories from that very book to him. It carries some of his happiest memories. For the first time in years, Dismit's anger fades. Overcome with emotion, he lowers his weapon and surrenders. And just like that, Peter wins the king's first challenge without ever swinging a sword. Everyone is amazed by what Peter has done. The crowd cheers loudly, praising him for defeating Dismit without violence. Even the king is stunned. But the king isn't finished yet. For Peter's second challenge, he announces something that seems completely impossible. Peter must fly through the air in front of the entire town. The crowd falls silent. Everyone is shocked because no person has ever truly flown before. Even so, Peter accepts the challenge without hesitation. He wants the elephant badly enough to try anything. Later, Peter visits the elephant and sits beside it. "I don't know if I'll be able to fly tomorrow, but I promise I'll find a way to set you free." The elephant doesn't understand his words, but somehow it understands his kindness. And for the first time in a long while, the elephant begins to feel hopeful that it might someday see its family again. Meanwhile, Peter's victory over Dismit has started to change Baltiz. People who had spent years believing that nothing was possible are beginning to hope again. They start believing in possibilities. Because of that renewed optimism, the strange clouds hanging over Baltiz begin to break apart, allowing sunlight to shine through for the first time in years. Little by little, happiness starts returning to the city. Elsewhere, Adele learns that an elephant has arrived in town. Excited by the news, she asks the nun if they can travel into the city to see it. After some hesitation, the nun agrees. Adele is thrilled. The next day, Peter prepares for his flying challenge, but Vilna tries to stop him. He insists that no human being can fly and warns Peter not to embarrass himself chasing impossible dreams. Peter becomes frustrated. Right now, he needs support, but instead of encouraging him, Vilna keeps telling him to quit. Upset, Peter storms away. Not long afterward, Leo finds Peter sitting alone and invites him inside. Leo and his wife share a meal with him. For Peter, it's an unforgettable experience. He spent most of his life eating stale bread and tiny fish, so tasting a warm and delicious meal feels like a luxury he never knew existed. Meanwhile, the nun and Adele arrive in Baltiz. The nun is nervous because she believes the people in the city might be unfriendly or dangerous. At the same time, Vilna is sitting alone, feeling guilty about his argument with Peter. His thoughts drift back to the day he first met him. During the war, Vilna heard children crying inside a damaged house. When he entered, he found a nun hiding with 2 small children. The nun begged him to take the children somewhere safe, but as a soldier, Vilna knew he couldn't care for both of them. So he took the older child, Peter, and left the younger one, Adele, with the nun. Moments after he left the house, a massive explosion destroyed the building. Believing no one could have survived, Vilna assumed the nun and Adele had been killed. For years, he carried the guilt of that moment. He blamed himself because he believed he could have saved them if he had made a different choice. What Vilna never knew was that the nun and Adele actually survived. And because they thought Vilna had died in the war while protecting Peter, they believed Peter was gone as well. That's why Vilna always told Peter that his sister was dead. And that's why the nun always told Adele that her older brother was no longer alive. The following day, the entire town gathers to witness Peter's second challenge. Everyone wants to see whether the impossible can actually happen. As the king travels to the event, he's told something interesting. The mayor has not laughed a single time since her brother was killed in the war. When Peter arrives, he climbs to the top of the tallest building in town. Below him stand Leo, the townspeople, and countless others watching nervously. Peter takes a deep breath, then he jumps. The crowd gasps. He plummets toward the ground at incredible speed. People scream in fear, but at the last possible second, a parachute bursts out of his backpack. The chute catches the wind, and suddenly Peter begins soaring through the sky. The entire crowd erupts with excitement. For a moment, it truly looks like he's flying. Vilna watches in amazement. The magician smiles. Adele stares up at the sky in wonder. And all across Baltiz, people cheer as Peter accomplishes something they once believed was impossible. The king congratulates Peter for completing the second challenge, and then reveals the third and final task. If Peter succeeds, the elephant will officially be his. But this challenge is even harder than the first two. Peter must make the mayor laugh. That might not sound impossible, but ever since her brother died in the war, the mayor hasn't laughed even once. Meanwhile, Adele visits the elephant and once again runs into Peter. The moment they spend time together, Peter feels a strange connection with her. He can't explain it, but being around Adele feels familiar and comforting. Of course, Peter has no idea that Adele is actually the sister he's been searching for all these years. Before long, the two become good friends. Adele even lends Peter a joke book, and he spends the evening practicing funny stories and jokes, hoping they'll help him complete the final challenge. The next day, the royal court gathers for the event. The king, the mayor, and the entire town watch as Peter steps forward and begins telling jokes. Unfortunately, every single joke falls flat. Nobody laughs, especially not the mayor. Wanting to encourage Peter, the mayor eventually forces a fake laugh, but the king immediately notices. He tells her that fake laughter doesn't count and asks her not to pretend. Realizing he's running out of options, Peter makes a surprising request. He asks the king to free the elephant. By now, Peter understands that the elephant has a family of its own, and he realizes it wouldn't be right to keep the elephant separated from the ones it loves, just so he can continue searching for his sister. More than anything, Peter wants the elephant to go home. The king refuses. He orders the elephant to be taken away and prepares to leave with it. But as he's walking away, something unexpected happens. The elephant suddenly sprays a huge stream of water directly onto the king. The king is completely soaked. For a moment, everyone stands frozen. Then the mayor bursts out laughing. She laughs harder than she has in years. Soon, the townspeople start laughing too. Even the king can't help but laugh at how ridiculous he looks. The entire crowd joins in. At last, the king admits that Peter has completed the final challenge. The mayor laughed, and that means the elephant now belongs to Peter. Peter is overjoyed. The elephant gently lifts him onto its head, and the two share a touching moment together. Later, Peter visits the magician in jail. He asks him for one final favor. He wants the elephant sent back to wherever it originally came from. At first, the magician refuses. He doesn't believe he's powerful enough to perform that kind of magic. But then the woman who was injured when the elephant fell from the sky speaks up. She reminds him that the spell he cast changed Baltiz forever. Because of that magic, people started believing again. They rediscovered hope. And once they believed that anything was possible, impossible things started happening. She convinces the magician that he is capable of sending the elephant home. Finally, he agrees. The following day, the magician, Vilna, Peter, and the entire town gather together. Using his magic, the magician opens a path and sends the elephant back to its family. Everyone watches in amazement. The reunion is beautiful, and the crowd celebrates as the elephant finally returns home. A little later, Adele asks Peter an important question. Why did you send the elephant away? It could have helped you find your sister. Peter smiles and replies, getting the elephant back to its family was more important. At that moment, the strange clouds that had covered Baltiz for years finally disappear. Warm sunlight shines across the city once again. The people cheer as the darkness that once surrounded Baltiz is finally gone. Hope has returned. And once again, the city becomes a place where anything feels possible. Soon afterward, the nun arrives to pick up Adele, while Vilna comes to meet Peter. The moment Vilna and the nun see each other, they instantly recognize one another. Suddenly, the truth becomes clear. Peter realizes that the sister he has spent years searching for is standing right in front of him, Adele. The brother and sister rush into each other's arms, overwhelmed with joy after being separated for so many years. Nearby, the magician finally makes peace with the woman who was injured by the elephant. This time, he successfully uses his magic to create a beautiful bouquet of flowers and presents it to her. Then he continues on his journey, ready for a new chapter in his life. Before long, Baltiz becomes the magical and joyful city it once was. The people believe again, they dream again, and most importantly, they hope again. Peter, Adele, the nun, and Vilna eventually move in together with Mr. Leo and his wife, creating the loving family Peter always wanted. And somewhere far away, the elephant is finally reunited with its family, living happily once more. Sometimes, all it takes is a little hope to change everything.